On Christmas Eve, 1883, the town of Redemption Creek locked its doors against two things: the bitter cold and the past. They failed on both counts, because when the townsfolk looked to the ridge, they didn't see a blizzard. They saw a ghost, an Apache, and not just any Apache. This was Nalin, the woman chief of the Chiricahua. She rode into the town that hated her on the one night they celebrated peace, not with a war party, but with a dying child. And she had a Christmas wish that could only be granted by the one man who had betrayed her most. The snow came early to Redemption Creek, Arizona Territory, in 1883. It wasn't a gentle, festive dusting. It was a mean, wind-driven siege, piling up against the false fronts of the dry goods store and the Gilded Cage saloon, silencing the streets with a thick, white shroud. It was Christmas Eve, and the town was holding its breath. Inside the saloon, the player piano had been convinced to churn out a tinny, hesitant, "O come, all ye faithful," a sound drowned every few seconds by the howl of the wind rattling the ill-fitting window panes. Sheriff Brody, a man whose face looked like a poorly folded map, stared into his whiskey, wishing he were anywhere else. Christmas in a town called Redemption Creek always felt like a bitter joke. "Another one, Brody?" asked the barkeep, polishing a glass that was already clean. Brody grunted, sliding his glass forward. "Just keep the bottle close." It was then that the music stopped, not just the piano, but the low murmur of the half-dozen prospectors and ranchers nursing their drinks. Every head turned toward the batwing doors, not because they'd heard anything, but because they'd stopped hearing something. The wind. A shadow fell across the entrance. A figure stood there, framed by the swirling grey outside. The snow caked their shoulders, melting and dripping onto the floorboards. The figure was small, wrapped in a thick buffalo hide, but it was the Winchester held loosely in a gloved hand that held the room's attention. "Store's closed, friend," the barkeep said, his voice a dry rasp. The figure pushed back the hide hood. A collective gasp sucked the air from the room. It wasn't a friend. It was a woman. Her face was copper, high-boned, and etched with an authority that defied the cold. Her black hair was pulled back tight, and her eyes were a frozen lake, reflecting the harsh light of the saloon. This was no settler woman lost in the storm. This was Apache. "Where?" she said, her voice low and rough, like stones grinding together. "Is the sheriff?" Brody set his glass down, the thud abnormally loud in the silence. He slowly stood, his joints cracking in protest. "I reckon that's me, ma'am." The woman's eyes snapped to him. She gave no sign of fear or supplication. She looked at him as if he were a rock in her path, something to be navigated, not feared. "I am Nalin, chief of the Chiricahua," she stated. It was not a boast, it was a fact. A drunk prospector in the corner chuckled. "A squaw chief? That's a good one. Get her out of here, Brody. It's Christmas." Nalin's gaze didn't waver from the sheriff. "I am not here for you. I am here for him." She shifted the buffalo hide she was carrying. It wasn't just a wrap. It was a bundle. And inside the bundle, something moved. A small, pained cough. The entire saloon tensed. A child. Brody put his hands up, palms out. All right. Everyone stay calm. This ain't no war party. She's alone." He stepped around the bar, his boots heavy on the floor. "What do you want, Nalin? We ain't got no truck with the San Carlos reservation people here." "I do not come from San Carlos," she said, the words laced with contempt for the reservation that was a prison. "I come from the Dragoon Mountains, and I am not here for truck. I am here for the Nakaye, the white man." "We're all white men here, ma'am, except for maybe old Dusty," Brody said, trying to ease the tension. "I am here for one," she repeated, stepping inside fully and letting the doors swing shut. The wind roared back to life outside. "His name is Elias. Where is Elias Thorne?" The name hit the room like a physical blow. The barkeep dropped the glass he was holding, and it shattered on the floor. The drunk prospector sobered up fast. "Thorne? You mean Dr. Thorne?" Brodie's hand instinctively went to the butt of his peacemaker. Dr. Elias Thorne wasn't just the town doctor. He was the son-in-law of Jedediah Bishop, the man who owned the bank, the mine, and 90% of the land in the county. He was untouchable. Nalin took another step. The bundle in her arms whimpered. "He is sick," she said, her voice breaking for just a fraction of a second. "My son. He is sick. I need Elias. Now." Brodie looked at the woman, then at the door, then at the nervous, angry faces of the men in the bar. This wasn't just trouble. This was dynamite with a lit fuse. "Mom," Brodie said, pulling on his heavy coat, "you better come with me, and you better pray this Christmas Eve is about forgiveness, because Jedediah Bishop, he ain't the forgiving kind." Nalin just stared through him. "I am not here to ask. I am here to take." She followed him out into the storm, a ghost of the past walking straight toward the brightest house in town, where the music was just swelling for the annual Bishop Christmas party. The Bishop house sat on the only hill in Redemption Creek, a 2-story Victorian monstrosity of carved wood and stained glass that spat yellow light onto the virgin snow. It was a monument to Jedediah Bishop's ego, built with money ripped from the earth and the pockets of the men below. Inside, it was a different world. A massive pine tree, hauled 100 miles, stood in the parlor, draped in German glass ornaments and real candles. A string quartet soared away at a waltz. Men in dark suits and women in bustled silk gowns drank hot mulled wine and laughed too loudly. This was the pinnacle of civilization in the Arizona Territory, or so Bishop liked to believe. Dr. Elias Thorne stood near the fireplace, a glass of brandy in his hand. He looked the part of the sophisticated gentleman, a tailored suit, a neatly trimmed beard, and the weary, intelligent eyes of a man of medicine. He nodded politely as a councilman prattled on about railroad bonds, but his mind was elsewhere. It was always elsewhere. His wife, Amelia Thorne, née Bishop, glided to his side. She was beautiful, fragile as a porcelain doll, with pale blonde hair and her father's ice-blue eyes. "Elias, dearest, you haven't spoken a word all night. It's Christmas. Do try to look present." Elias forced a smile. "Of course, my dear. Just thinking about the cold. It's a hard night for the sick." "Nonsense," a booming voice cut in. Jedediah Bishop, thick-bodied and red-faced, clapped Elias on the shoulder, nearly spilling his brandy. Bishop was a man who took up all the air in a room. "It's a night for profit. This cold snap means my beef prices will double by New Year's. Drink up, son. You're part of this family. Part of this success." Elias stiffened at the touch. He was indeed part of the family. A prized possession, like the house or the new thoroughbred in the stable. Bishop had saved him, plucked him from obscurity and ruin after his time as an army surgeon at Fort Bowie, and given him a new life. A gilded cage. It was then that the front door banged open. A blast of icy wind tore through the parlor, guttering the candles on the tree. The waltz died in a screech of tortured violins. Sheriff Brodie stood on the threshold, his hat in his hands, snow melting on his mustache. And behind him, stepping into the opulent light, was Nalin. She was an apparition. Her buckskins were worn, her face was raw from the wind, but she stood as tall as any guest. The warmth of the room hit the frozen bundle in her arms, and the child inside let out a desperate, wheezing gasp that sounded like a dry reed breaking. The party froze. Women gasped and clutched their pearls. Men reached for holsters that weren't there. Elias Thorne dropped his brandy glass. It shattered on the marble hearth, the sound echoing the one of his world breaking apart. "Nalin," he whispered. The name was a prayer and a curse. She saw him. Across the room, her eyes locked onto his, and in them he saw 8 years of betrayal, pain, and burning, unextinguished fire. "Elias," she said, her voice cutting through the shocked silence. Amelia looked at her husband. His face was white, his eyes fixed on the Apache woman. "Elias, who is this person? Brody, what is the meaning of this? Remove her!" Jedediah Bishop's face had gone from jovial red to a deep, dangerous purple. "Brody, I gave you one job. Keep the trash out of this town. You bring this filth into my home on Christmas Eve." She was insistent, Mr. Bishop," Brody stammered. "She's asking for the doctor." "Get her out!" Bishop roared. Nalin ignored him. She took 2 steps forward, pushing past a stunned councilman, and stopped in the center of the room. With a steady hand, she began to unwrap the bundle. "No," Elias breathed, taking a step forward. "Elias, don't you dare," Amelia warned, her voice trembling. Nalin pulled back the final layer of buffalo hide. Inside lay a boy, perhaps 7 or 8 years old, his skin pale and slick with a feverish sweat. His small chest heaved, fighting for every breath. He was thin, his black hair matted, but as his eyes fluttered open in the light, he looked. "He is dying," Nalin said, her voice flat and devoid of weakness. She held the boy out, not to the room, but to Elias. "It's diphtheria," Elias said instantly, his medical training taking over, pushing past the shock. "The grey membrane. I can see it from here. He's in the advanced stages." "You will fix him," Nalin commanded. I can't," Elias stammered. "It's too—" "You will," Nalin said. She looked directly into Elias's soul. "You will fix him, Nakaya." Then she delivered the final blow. The words that would burn the Bishop house to its foundation. "You will not let him die, Elias Thorne. He is your son." A collective, horrified silence descended. Amelia Thorne let out a small, broken sound, like a bird being crushed. She stared at the sick child, at his dark hair, yes, but at the shape of his eyes, the curve of his chin. It was Elias. It was her husband, rendered in copper. Jedediah Bishop drew a long, rattling breath. "You lying heathen." He pointed a thick finger at Nalin. "You will take your bastard whelp and get out of my house, or I will have Sly McVitie put a bullet through both of you." Elias finally moved. He didn't look at his wife or his father-in-law. He walked past them as if they were ghosts, and gently took the sick boy from Nalin's arms. The boy was light. Far too light. "Upstairs," Elias said, his voice now cold and clinical. "My medical bag. Now." "Elias!" Amelia shrieked, her voice cracking with betrayal. "If you touch that thing, this marriage is over." Elias turned, the dying boy in his arms. He looked at his wife, and for the first time, she saw the man he'd been before her father had bought him. "It was over 8 years ago," he said quietly. "It was over before it ever began." He brushed past her and took the stairs 2 at a time. Nalin followed, a silent shadow, leaving Sheriff Brody to face the apoplectic rage of Jedediah Bishop. The Christmas party was over. The war had just begun. The guest bedroom was sterile and cold, filled with unused furniture and the faint scent of lavender. Elias laid the boy, his son, on the bed, his hands shaking as he ripped open his black leather medical bag. "His name," Nalin said from the doorway, her Winchester still in her hand, "is Taza." "Taza," Elias repeated. It felt foreign on his tongue. He lit a lantern, the bright light illuminating the boy's desperate struggle for air. The telltale grey, leathery patch was growing across the boy's tonsils, closing his throat. "He's suffocating, Narlin. I don't know if I can—" "You will," she said. It was not a request. As Elias worked, crushing herbs for a poultice to ease the swelling, the past flooded the room, more potent than the storm outside. He saw Fort Bowie, 1875. He wasn't a society doctor then. He was a young, idealistic army surgeon, disgusted by the brutal politics of the Apache wars. He'd been assigned to a parley with a band of Chiricahua. That's where he saw her. She wasn't the chief then, but the daughter of one. She'd come to translate, her English perfect, learned from a captive she had spared. They met in secret, in the canyons at sunset. He was fascinated by her wisdom, her fierce pride. She was drawn to his gentleness, a quality absent in the world she knew. They fell in love, a dangerous, impossible love that bridged two worlds at war. "I told you I would come for you," he whispered, his hands working on Taza. "I told you to wait for me." "You lied," Narlin said, her voice cold. "You ran." "No!" Elias slammed his fist on the nightstand. "I was forced out. Jedediah Bishop was there. He was a beef contractor for the army. He saw us. He told my commanding officer I was a squaw man, that I was trading army secrets for you." He remembered the night. Bishop, smiling. "You're a disgrace, Thorne. But I like you. You're smart. I can use a smart man. The CO is going to have you court-martialed, hanged probably, or you could disappear. I have a town, a nice, quiet place. You come with me, you never look back, and I'll make you a rich man." "What about Narlin?" Elias had begged. "Her?" Bishop had laughed. "She's Apache. They'll be moved to San Carlos by the end of the month. You'll never see her again, anyway. Forget her." "He told me you were dead," Elias said, his voice thick with self-loathing. "He told me your band was pacified by a rogue patrol from Fort Thomas, that they'd all been killed. Nayland, I believed him. It was easier to believe him than to believe I was a coward." Narlin's face remained a mask, but her knuckles were white on the rifle. "He lied to us both. When you did not come, my people said you were just another white man. A liar. When he was born," she nodded at Taza, "my father's rivals used it to shame him. They said our blood was weak. I was cast out." "How did you become chief?" "I fought. My father died. Our band was scattered. I gathered the strong. I hunted our enemies. I proved my blood was not weak. I proved I was not weak. I lead them because I am the only one who has never lied to them." Elias looked at the boy, his son, raised in the wilderness by a warrior chief, and he looked at his own soft hands. A terrible sound came from the bed, a choking, gasping rattle. Taza's eyes rolled back. "He's closing up," Elias said, panic gripping him. "The membrane is too thick. A poultice won't work." "Then cut it," Narlin ordered. "I can't. It's not a tumor. It's a membrane. If I cut it, he'll bleed to death. It's the toxin, Narlin. The diphtheria toxin. It's poisoning his blood." "Then what?" "You do nothing," she hissed, raising the rifle. "There's one thing," Elias said, his mind racing. "Antitoxin. It's new. Developed in Europe. I read about it in the Boston Medical Journal. It's a serum. It neutralizes the poison. I ordered some. For Bishop. He has a weak heart. He's terrified of sickness." "Where is it?" "In his office. At the Bishop Mining and Goods store. It's locked in his private safe." As if summoned, the door to the bedroom burst open. Jedediah Bishop stood there, his face mottled with rage. Beside him was a tall, thin man in a black duster, whose face was all bone and shadow. This was Silas Sly McVitie, Bishop's hired gun, a man rumoured to have killed 12 men and never blinked. "The show's over," Bishop snarled. "Sly, take the squaw. We'll dump her and her bastard in a snowdrift. Let the coyotes have their Christmas dinner." Nalin raised her Winchester in a single, fluid motion. The barrel aimed squarely at Bishop's chest. "You move and you die." Sly McVitie didn't even flinch, his hand hovering over his pistol. "That's a bold move, little lady. You'll get him, sure, but I'll get you. And the doc here will get the next one. Who's faster, you or me?" "Mr. Bishop, please!" Elias shouted, shielding Taza with his body. "He's dying. I need the antitoxin from your safe." Bishop laughed, a harsh, barking sound. "Antitoxin? For that? I'd sooner burn this house to the ground, with all of you in it. That serum cost me $500 gold. It's for me, not for some half-breed mistake." "He is your grandson," Elias roared. "He is nothing," Bishop spat. "He is the end of you, Elias. Your reputation, my daughter's life, all of it. Now, Sly." "No." The voice came from the hallway. It was small, but it cut through the standoff. Amelia Thorne stood there, her face pale, her knuckles white. She was holding a double-barreled shotgun, and it was aimed not at Nalin, but at her father. "Amelia, put that down," Bishop commanded. "You don't know what you're doing, girl." "I know exactly what I'm doing," Amelia said, her voice shaking but resolute. "I am saving my husband. I am saving this house. You will not commit murder under my roof." "It ain't murder, Mum," Sly McVitie said, his voice a dry whisper. "It's just tidying up." "He needs the serum, Father," Amelia said, ignoring Sly. "Give Elias the key." "You would choose him and her over me? Your own blood?" Bishop bellowed. "He is my husband," Amelia said. "For better or worse. You made sure of that. Now give him the key, or I swear to God, Father, I will pull this trigger." Bishop looked at his daughter, at the mad woman with the rifle, at the doctor protecting the dying child, and at the killer by his side. It was a stalemate. "Fine," Bishop snarled, his eyes glittering with malice. "Fine. You want to save the little heathen? Go ahead. But Sly stays here, and he stays with her." He pointed at Nalin. "One false move, one step out of this room, and he puts a bullet in her head. You," he jabbed a finger at Elias, "you and me will go to the store, and you'll see what it costs to defy me." Elias looked at Nalin. She gave a single, imperceptible nod. "Go." "And you?" Bishop said to his daughter. "When this is done, you and I are going to have a talk." He grabbed Elias by the arm and dragged him out of the room, leaving Amelia and Nalin alone, 2 women from different worlds, trapped in a room with a killer, guarding a dying child. The guest room was a pressure cooker. The only sounds were the howling wind outside and the ragged, shallow breathing of Taza. Sly McVitie had taken the room's only chair, tilting it back against the wall next to the door. He was perfectly still, his eyes half-lidded, his duster hanging open to show the worn, dark handle of his revolver. He was a spider, content to wait. Nalin stood by the window, her Winchester held at her side. She stared out into the white abyss, but her every sense was focused on the room, on the man. She was a coiled spring, and the tension in the room was so thick it was hard to breathe. Amelia was the one in motion. She couldn't be still. She paced from the bed to the wash basin, wringing her hands, her silk dress rustling like dry leaves. Her world had been detonated. The man she loved, the quiet, haunted doctor, was a liar. Her father, the pillar of her life, was a monster, and this savage woman, this Apache, was the key to it all. She stopped at the bed, looking at the boy. Taza. He was shivering, his skin hot to the touch. In his fever dream, he muttered words in a language she'd only ever heard in nightmares, screamed by settlers recounting a raid. But then he whispered a word in English. Mother. Amelia's breath hitched. She looked at Nalin. He speaks English. I taught him, Nalin said, not turning from the window. He had to know the words of his father's people, the words of his enemies. We are not all your enemies, Amelia whispered, tears welling. Nalin finally turned. Her eyes were black and hard. Aren't you? Your father built this house on land stolen from my people. Your husband, he bought his comfortable life with silence and lies. And you sleep in a warm bed, in a fine house, while my people starve on the reservation at San Carlos or are hunted in the mountains. We are all your enemies. Amelia flinched, but the core of steel that was her father's only true legacy wouldn't let her break. He is your son, but he is also his son, Elias's son. Doesn't that make him part of this? He is Chiricahua, Nalin said. The world you live in will never see him as anything but a savage, a half-breed, something to be pitied or exterminated. Like my father wants to do, Amelia said, her voice flat. Sly McVitie cleared his throat. Mr. Bishop is a practical man, ma'am. He sees a problem. He fixes it. This is a problem. Amelia's gaze hardened. She looked at the killer, then at the warrior. My father is not a practical man. He's a bully. He controls things. He controlled Elias by lying to him. He controls this town by owning it. And he controls me by keeping you a doll, Nalin finished. Weak. Protected. Yes, Amelia said, a single hot tear of anger tracing a path down her cheek. Weak. Protected. She walked to the wash basin, dipped a cloth in the cool water, and returned to the bed. She gently wiped Taza's forehead. The boy's breathing seemed to ease, just a fraction. He won't get the serum, Nalin said, her voice dropping. This is a trick. Your father is taking Elias to the store to kill him. To kill them both, away from your eyes. No, Amelia said. He wouldn't. Elias is valuable. He is broken, Nalin corrected. He defied him. He is no longer valuable. He is a liability, like the boy, like me. Amelia's blood ran cold. Nalin was right. Her father was tidying up. He had taken Elias on a death march. Sly McVitie watched them, a flicker of interest in his dead eyes. Lots of talk. The doc'll be back, or he won't. Either way, my job is to stay here with you two ladies. Amelia stood up. Her spine was straight, her hands clenched. The porcelain doll was gone. In her place was Jedediah Bishop's daughter. You're right, she said to Nalin. He won't be back. Not unless we do something. She walked toward the door. Sly's chair hit the floor with a thud. I wouldn't, Mum. I'm just going to my room, Amelia said, her voice suddenly light, almost flirtatious. It's cold. I need a warmer shawl. Surely you won't deny a lady that. Sly hesitated. She was the boss's daughter. Make it quick. Oh, I will, Amelia said. She slipped out the door. Nalin watched her go, a flicker of confusion in her eyes. What was this? Amelia didn't go to her room. She flew down the hall to her father's study. It was his inner sanctum, smelling of cigar smoke and old leather. On the wall, above his massive oak desk, was a mounted rifle rack. It held his prized possessions, a Sharps buffalo rifle, a new model .73 Winchester, and a small, engraved Henry repeating rifle. Her hands moved with frantic purpose. She didn't just grab a shawl. She grabbed a box of .44 caliber cartridges from his desk drawer. She returned to the room, a heavy cashmere shawl draped over her arm, concealing the rifle and the box of shells. Sly McVitie eyed her, but she just smiled sweetly and walked to the fireplace. "It's so cold, isn't it?" she said, kneeling by the hearth. "I'll just build up the fire." Nalin watched her, her eyes narrowing. Amelia was fumbling with the log basket, her back to Sly. "You," Amelia said, her voice low, "at the window. You're letting in a draft." Nalin understood. She moved, her body blocking the sightline from Sly to the fireplace for a crucial second. In that second, Amelia wasn't building the fire. She was sliding the Henry rifle and the box of cartridges under the bed, deep into the shadows where they couldn't be seen. She stood up, brushing dust from her silk dress. "There. Much better." She returned to the bedside, sat in the small chair, and picked up the cloth. She resumed bathing Tarza's face, as if she were a devoted, loving mother. "What do you think, Mrs. Thorne?" Sly asked, suspicious. "I think," Amelia said, not looking up, "that my father is a very powerful man, and I think it's a shame my husband was so foolish." Sly relaxed. The world was back on its axis. The white woman was back in her place. Nalin met Amelia's eyes over the sick boy's head. It was a silent, terrifying compact. They were two enemies, united by one goal. The weak, protected doll had just armed the savage. Now they just had to wait for the killing to start. The walk to the Bishop Mining and Goods store was a descent into hell. The storm had reached its peak, a screaming banshee of ice and wind. The snow wasn't falling, it was moving horizontally, stinging any exposed skin like 1,000 needles. "Move!" Bishop yelled, shoving Elias forward. They were the only two souls in the whiteout. The street was gone, replaced by a churning river of snow. The lights from the houses were just faint, fuzzy blurs. "He won't make it without the serum, Jedediah," Elias shouted over the wind, stumbling through a drift. "For God's sake, he's your blood." "He's an infection," Bishop roared, his words ripped away by the gale. "An Apache stain on my family. You think I don't know what this does to me? To my name? The tombstone epitaph will have this by morning. Jedediah Bishop's half-breed grandson. They'll laugh me out of the territory. Is that all you care about? Your name? It's the only thing I care about. It's the only thing that's real." They reached the store. It was a dark, looming fortress. Bishop fumbled with the key, his thick gloves making him clumsy. He finally forced the door open and shoved Elias inside. The store was pitch black and freezing. It smelled of canvas, cured tobacco, and coffee beans. "The office, back here," Bishop grumbled, lighting a lantern on the counter. The light cast huge, dancing shadows. "And don't try anything, Elias. I may be old, but I'm faster than a coddled doctor." He led Elias to the back office. The safe was a massive black iron box. Bishop knelt, his back to Elias, and began working the combination. "You know," Bishop said, his voice conversational, as the tumblers clicked, "I did save you. You'd have been shot or died of drink at Fort Bowie. I gave you a life, a beautiful wife, respect, and you repay me with this, with him." "You built that life on a lie," Elias said, his eyes scanning the office. He saw shelves of ledgers, a shotgun leaning in the corner, and his medical supplies. "A lie?" Bishop chuckled. "It's not a lie if it's better than the truth. The truth is, you're a weak man, Elias. You fell for a savage. I gave you a better truth." Click. Whir. Thud. The safe door swung open. Bishop reached inside, past ledgers and bags of coin. He pulled out a small wooden box. "Here it is. The miracle cure." He stood up and tossed the box onto the desk, just out of Elias's reach. "You want it," Bishop said, his face illuminated from below by the lantern, making him look demonic. "Beg for it." "What?" "Jedediah, don't do this. The boy is dying. Beg for it. On your knees. Tell me I was right. Tell me you're grateful. Tell me you'll renounce that creature and the boy. Say you'll let them die." Elias stared at him, the man he had called father. This was the price, his soul for his son's life. "Go to hell, Jedediah," Elias whispered. Bishop's face contorted. "I knew it. You're still weak." Bishop's hand moved. He didn't grab the box. He grabbed the shotgun from the corner. "I'd hoped to do this clean," Bishop said, leveling the barrels at Elias's chest. "Make it look like you went for the serum and the Apache, shot you in the back. A nice, tragic story. But this'll do. A robbery gone wrong. I'll be the hero. The town will rally. It's perfect." "You're insane," Elias said, backing away. "I'm a builder," Bishop corrected, "and sometimes you have to clear the rotted wood before you can build." He cocked both hammers. Crash! The front window of the store exploded inward, showering the room in glass and snow. "Bishop!" a voice yelled from the street. "Drop it!" Sheriff Brody stood in the storm, his pistol drawn. "I heard shouting. I figured you weren't just shopping." Bishop snarled and swung the shotgun toward the front of the store, firing one barrel. The blast was deafening. The buckshot tore through a stack of blankets where Brody had been. Brody fired back. His shot was wild, smashing a row of whiskey bottles. Elias didn't wait. He dove for the desk, grabbing the wooden box of antitoxin, just as Bishop fired the second barrel. The shot went wide, obliterating the wall behind him. "You're a dead man, Brody!" Bishop roared, fumbling in his pocket for more shells. Elias scrambled to his feet, clutching the box, and bolted for the front door. He burst out into the blizzard, into the middle of a gunfight. "Elias, run!" Brody yelled, hunkered down behind a water trough. A shot rang out from the store. Bishop, now with a pistol. The bullet kicked up snow at Elias's feet. Elias ran, slipping and falling in the deep snow, adrenaline coursing through him. He was no longer a doctor. He was a father, running for his son's life. He heard another shot, then a grunt of pain. He looked back. Sheriff Brody was on one knee, clutching his shoulder, his pistol sinking into the snow. Bishop stood in the doorway of the store, leveling his pistol for the kill shot. "Merry Christmas, Sheriff," Bishop sneered. Crack. It wasn't Bishop's gun. The sound was sharper, faster. It came from the Bishop house, up on the hill. Jedediah Bishop froze. He looked down. A small, dark hole had appeared in his pistol hand. The gun dropped from his numb fingers. He looked up at his own house, his face a mask of disbelief. Crack. Crack. 2 more shots. They didn't hit him. They hit the sign above his head, splintering the B and I in Bishop. It was a warning, a terrifyingly accurate warning. From the upstairs guest window, a small puff of smoke dissipated in the wind. Elias didn't need to be told twice. He scrambled up the hill, clutching the precious box as Bishop staggered back into his store, howling in pain and rage, defeated not by the law, but by a ghost. Elias burst into the guest room, his chest heaving, snow and blood, Brody's blood from where he'd briefly helped him, on his coat. "I have it! I have it!" Amelia was at the window, the Henry rifle still smoking in her hands. Narlin stood over Tadza, her knife out. Not as a weapon, but as a tool. "He stopped breathing," Narlin said, her voice terrifyingly calm. Sly McVitie lay on the floor by the door, a small, dark stain spreading on his chest. His pistol was still in its holster. What happened?" Elias stammered. "He heard the shots," Amelia said, her voice shaking as the adrenaline faded. "He went for his gun. He said, 'Time to tidy up.'" He didn't know she had a knife. Nalin hadn't waited for him to draw. The moment he'd tensed, she had crossed the room in a blur, her skinning knife burying itself in his chest. A warrior's reflex. "Elias! The boy!" Amelia screamed. Elias dropped to his knees. Tarza's face was blue, his body still. No, not after all this. He tore the lid off the wooden box. Inside, nestled on velvet, was a glass vial of amber serum and a large metal syringe. His hands were shaking so badly he could barely fit the needle into the vial. "Hold him," he commanded. Nalin and Amelia, the chief and the socialite, grabbed the boy's frail body. "His throat is closed," Nalin said. "The air. It cannot get in." "It's the toxin," Elias said. "It's paralyzed his lungs. The serum needs time. Time he doesn't have." He looked at Nalin's bloody knife. "You said, cut him." "You said he would bleed," Nalin said. "He will," Elias said, his mind racing. "But he'll suffocate first." He grabbed his bag. "It's a tracheotomy. A desperate, desperate chance." "Do it." He didn't have time to clean. He grabbed the scalpel, found the small notch in the boy's throat, and made the incision. It was a brutal, bloody act. Nalin held her son's head steady, her face a stone mask, though a single tear escaped and froze on her cheek. Elias inserted a small metal tube from his kit. Tarza's chest gave a violent, spasmodic jerk. A small, wet, whistling sound filled the room. He was breathing. "Now," Elias said, his voice trembling with a terrifying hope. He filled the syringe with the amber serum. "Hold him still." He slid the needle into his son's thin arm and pushed the plunger. The miracle cure. And then they waited. The house was silent. The gunshots in the street had stopped. The storm raged. Sly McVitie's body lay cooling on the floor. Minutes passed, feeling like centuries. Suddenly, the front door of the house slammed open downstairs. "Amelia!" Jedediah Bishop's voice, thick with pain and madness, echoed up the stairs. "You shot me, your own father, for them." Heavy, uneven footsteps, one dragging, started up the stairs. He was bleeding, but he was coming. "Elias," Amelia whispered, grabbing the now empty Henry rifle. "Take the boy. The back stairs. Go." "I'm not leaving you," Elias said, standing up. "You are," Nalin said. She picked up her Winchester. "This is my fight. He came for me." "He came for all of us," Amelia said, standing beside her. The two women, armed, stood in the doorway, facing the dark landing. "You're traitors!" Bishop screamed, appearing at the top of the stairs. His left hand was wrapped in a bloody cloth. In his right, he held another pistol. His face was a mask of sweat, blood, and fury. "This house is mine. This family is mine, and I will cleanse it." He raised his pistol at Amelia. Before he could fire, Nalin leveled her rifle. "No." "You," Bishop sneered, turning his aim to Nalin. "You started this. I'll finish it." He pulled the trigger. Click. His pistol was wet. The powder was damp from the snow. He stared at it in horror. Nalin did not hesitate. She didn't shoot to kill. She shot to end it. The rifle bucked in her hands. The bullet struck Bishop square in the right shoulder, the same one he used for his gun. The impact spun him around, shattering the bone, and he tumbled backward, crashing down the long staircase to land in a broken heap in the foyer below. Silence. From the bed, a small voice coughed. A real, wet cough, not a dry rasp. "Mother?" Elias, Nalin, and Amelia all turned at once. Tarza's eyes were open. They were clear. The blue tint was gone from his lips. His chest was rising and falling with the rhythm of the tube. "Elias," Nalin breathed. Elias rushed to the bed, putting his stethoscope to the boy's chest. He listened, and for the first time in 8 years, he smiled. A true, painful, beautiful smile. The fever. It's breaking. The serum, it's working. My God, Nalin, he's going to live. Nalin's legs gave out. She slumped against the wall, the Winchester sliding from her grasp. She put her face in her hands, and the great Apache chief, the warrior who had never been weak, wept. Christmas morning dawned not with the peace of a hymn, but with the cold, clinical light of an interrogation. The storm had broken, scoured from the sky, leaving behind a world reborn in blinding white. The sky was a painful, aching blue, and the new sun cast long, unforgiving shadows across Redemption Creek. It was a light that revealed everything. The drifts piled like giants' graves against the saloon, the shattered glass of the Bishop Mining and Goods storefront, and the thin, pale column of smoke rising from the chimney of the house on the hill, a house that had, overnight, become a tomb for one life and a sanctuary for another. Inside that house, the silence was profound. The grand foyer was a wreck, a testament to the night's battle. A priceless grandfather clock lay on its side, its glass face shattered, its hands forever frozen. The expensive Persian rug was stained with the blood of two men, one a hired killer, the other a fallen king. Upstairs, the guest room was a different world. It was a pocket of warmth and life in the cold, dead house. The fire crackled. Taza was no longer blue and fighting, but resting, his skin a healthy, warm copper. He was asleep, and his breathing was the most beautiful sound Elias Thorne had ever heard, deep, even, and rhythmic, a soft whistle from the small, sutured incision in his throat, but a sound of life. Nonetheless, Elias had not slept. He had spent the hours since the serum's victory in a state of holy, exhausted vigilance. He was a doctor again, a true healer, not just a society physician. He watched the boy, his son, and felt a paternal pride so fierce it terrified him. Amelia was there too. She sat in the chair by the bed, her silk party dress wrinkled and stained, her perfect hair undone. Sometime in the small hours, she had reached out and taken Taza's small hand in hers, and she had not let go. She had watched the Apache woman, Nalin, who stood like a bronze statue by the window, staring out at the mountains, her mountains, as the sun began to light their peaks. The standoff, the shared fight, had evaporated, leaving this strange, fragile truce. The silence was broken by a heavy boot step in the hall. Sheriff Brody, his arm in a sling made from one of Amelia's linen napkins, appeared in the doorway. He looked from Nalin to Elias, then to Amelia, and finally to the sleeping boy. He made it, Brody said, his voice rough. Elias nodded, a weary smile touching his lips. He'll live, Sheriff. He's strong, like his mother. Brody nodded, relieved. That's something. As for the other one, he thumbed back toward the master bedroom. Bishop is awake. He's loud. But he ain't going nowhere. His shoulder is shattered, and his legs broke from the fall. I told him he's under arrest for the attempted murder of, well, about half the town, seems like. He will not be tried, Nalin said, her voice quiet, her back still to the room. Men like him are not tried. They are just replaced. As if to prove her point, Elias spoke. I checked on him. He's broken. He'll never hold a gun again. He'll never walk without a cane. His reign is over. Good, Brody said. I'll post a deputy here till the circuit judge arrives in the spring. But his power... You're right, Mum. He nodded to Nalin's back. It's gone. The whole town's out there. They're talking. They know he shot at me. They know Elias ran for the medicine. They know you, he looked at Amelia. And you, he nodded to Nalin. Stood him down. Redemption Creek ain't his town anymore. Brody tipped his hat. Merry Christmas, folks. He turned and walked away, his boots thudding with a new, heavier authority. The three adults were alone again with the child. Nalin, Elias began, his voice thick with 8 years of guilt. He crossed the room to her. I am so sorry. For everything. For being a coward. For believing the lies. I never meant to leave you. Nalin finally turned. Her eyes were not angry. They were ancient, weary, and clear. But you did leave, Elias. We are not what we mean to do. We are what we do. You ran. I fought. We are who we are. Then let me change, he pleaded, grabbing her hand. It was rough and strong. Stay. Don't go back to the mountains. Stay here, with me. With him, we can be a family. We can leave this town, leave this house. We can go to California. Anywhere. Tarza can be a doctor. I can teach him. Nalin looked at Elias's desperate, hopeful face. Then she looked at his other hand, the soft, pale hand of a gentleman. She slowly, gently pulled her hand away. And live as what? She asked, her voice devoid of malice, a simple question. As your Apache wife? A curiosity in a San Francisco parlor, a pet, and what of him? She gestured to Tarza. In that world, he is not a white man. He is a half-breed. In my world, he is the chief's son, but he has the blood of the men who hunt us. He would be torn in two, Elias. He would have no home. She looked around the opulent room, at the fine wallpaper and the heavy velvet curtains. I would die here. This cage. It is warm, but it is still a cage. My life is with my people. They wait for me. No, Elias whispered. Then he will come with me, Nalin said, her voice hardening. A test. No. The voice was not Elias's. It was Amelia's. She stood up, her small hand still dwarfing Tarza's. No, she said again, louder. The porcelain doll was gone. In her place was a woman made of bishop steel. You are his mother. I know that. But I have no child. I have no life but the one my father bought and locked in this house. This boy, watching him fight. It is the first real thing that has ever been mine. She looked at Nalin, woman to woman. I will not let him go. He's my son. Now. Nalin studied her for a long, silent moment. She saw the iron in Amelia's spine, the defiant fear in her eyes. She had passed the test. Nalin nodded slowly. My Christmas wish, she said, her voice softening, was not just for him to live. I can make a child live. I have done it, in the mountains, in the cold. My wish was for him to have a life I can no longer give him. The world of the Apache, it is ending. The white man's world, your world, is swallowing it. She looked from Elias to Amelia. He cannot live as a warrior, but he does not have to live as just a white man, either. She saw Amelia's confusion. You have the iron of your father, but you do not have his poison, Nalin said to her. You will love him. You will teach him. But you will do one thing for me. Anything, Amelia whispered. Nalin reached into the small medicine pouch at her belt. She pulled out a small, carved object and pressed it into Amelia's hand. It was a wooden eagle, its wings spread, its form smoothed by years of handling. You will tell him who he is, Nalin commanded, her voice the chief's voice once more. You will tell him his father is Elias Thorne, a healer. But you will also tell him he is Tarza, son of Nalin, chief of the Chiricahua. When he learns your God, you will tell him of Usan, the Creator, who gave us the mountains. When he learns his letters, you will teach him to read the spoor of a deer. You will tell him his blood is of the eagle, and he must fly higher than all of us. Do not let this house, this gold, make him weak. Swear it." Amelia closed her hand around the eagle, its wooden edges digging into her palm. "I swear it," she said, her voice breaking but firm. Nalin nodded. It was done. She walked to the bed and leaned down. She kissed her son's forehead. "Be strong, my son," she whispered in the Apache tongue. "Shizinde, my little eagle." She turned and walked to the door, not looking back. Elias followed her, his heart breaking. "Nalin, I—" She stopped in the hallway but did not turn. "Do not be sorry, Elias Thorne. Be a father. That is all the apology I need." She walked down the grand staircase, her moccasins silent on the steps. She passed the broken clock. She passed the door to Bishop's room, where a low, animalistic moan of pain and rage could be heard. She did not falter. Sheriff Brody was standing by the front door, his hat in his hand. He had her Winchester, which he'd retrieved from the guest room. He held it out to her. But first. "Ma'am," he said. It was the first time he had ever shown one of her people that respect. Nalin took the rifle, her eyes acknowledging him. She opened the front door. The light was blinding. The town was alive, but quiet. Men were on the street, shoveling snow, but they stopped. They all stopped. They watched as the Apache woman, the squaw chief, walked onto the porch of the Bishop house. Her horse, which Brody had stabled and fed, was tied to the rail. She untied it and mounted in one fluid, powerful motion. She looked at the town of Redemption Creek, at the smoking chimneys, at the silent, watching people. She looked at the sign on the saloon, the Gilded Cage. Then she looked up at the ridge, toward the Dragoon Mountains, which were now a brilliant, sunlit purple. She did not look back at the house. She didn't need to. She nudged her horse, and it walked, proud and slow, down the main street. The settlers and prospectors moved out of her way. She rode through the center of the town that had hated her, and she rode out the other side. She rode up the ridge, a lone, dark figure against the impossible white of the snow. When she reached the crest, she was a silhouette against the rising sun, a bronze statue of a forgotten god. And then she was gone. Back in the house, in the guest room, Elias Thorne stood, shaken and hollow. He heard a small sound. Amelia was crying, quiet, exhausted tears. He walked over to the bed. He looked at his wife, this stranger who had saved them all. He looked at his son. The future. The old life was shattered in the foyer below. Slowly, Elias reached out and placed his hand on Amelia's shoulder. She did not flinch. She leaned into his touch, her tears dampening his sleeve. They stood together, for the first time, as husband and wife, and they looked down at the sleeping boy who was their son. It was Christmas, and in the ruins of their old lives, a new one had just, painfully, begun. Nalin's wish came true, but it cost her everything she loved. She rode into town a desperate mother and rode out a legend, leaving behind a broken town forced to find its redemption, a doctor who had reclaimed his soul, and a new mother who found her strength in an enemy. The West wasn't just one with bullets and railroads. It was one with impossible sacrifices and heartbreaking choices. The story of Taza, the white man's son, and the Apache's heir, was just beginning. What do you think happened to Taza? Did Nalin ever see him again? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. These hidden stories of the Wild West are everywhere, and we're here to tell them. If you enjoyed this journey into the past, please hit that like button, share this story with someone who needs to hear it, and most importantly, subscribe to our channel for more tales of grit, drama, and the true price of survival. Thank you for watching.